All right.
As you can probably see on the screen, this is Wednesday, the 18th of April, and it feels more like February. We're standing here with Aurel Parsons, just outside of his home on the corner of Elm and Oak Street, and the temperature is probably 33, 35, and the wind's blowing pretty good, Aurel?
Yeah, I guess it is.
Aurel, as most of you know out there, is the mayor of the village of Champlain, but we're not here to talk politics or to talk about that job with Aurel. Aurel's got many hats. He reminds me of the owner of the Midway with all the hats you see on his advertisement, the man of many hats. Aurel is a man of many hats and wearing none today, but he's a father, he's a husband, he's a grandfather, he's a legionnaire, a fireman, former police department here in Champlain, VFW. He's done it all. Former king with his wife was queen of the Winter Carnival in Rouse's Point several years ago. But we're here today for his avocation. What does he do in his spare time? We know that he's a mortician or undertaker, would you have it, for his job here at the Clark Funeral Home. But we're here to talk about his railroads today. But before we get into that, Aurel, how long have you lived in Champlain?
Since 1932.
And you came from where?
From Dover, New Jersey.
You were born in New Jersey?
No, born in Plattsburgh.
And then moved to New Jersey?
Moved back to Jersey.
Now, I know and others know that your father was also an undertaker mortician here.
Yes.
When did he get into business?
He got into business in 1932 when he came up to Champlain to start the funeral home here with Mr. Clark and formed the M.B. Clark Funeral Home.
At this location?
At this location. My grandfather was also, his father was also a funeral director in Morse Forks. So it's 3 generations.
3 generations. And your son?
No.
He's not going to get into that.
Nothing.
He's a plumber.
He's a plumber.
He goes into the holes. You don't put him in the holes.
That's right.
That's right. All right. Tell us about this this old, beautiful home here on the corner just across from the KSC's.
This house was built in 1916.
1916?
1916. The original house was built in 1831 and burnt in 1912. The original house cost $100 plus 2 barrels of rum to construct. This house is exactly the same as what the original was. There's 4 rooms upstairs that are hidden that were used for the carpetbaggers during the Civil War. And it's exactly the same as what the original house was. The only thing that's left of the original house is a brass door lock on the front door. That was the only thing that was saved.
That fire started down in the village, I understand,
Yes,
and came
it did.
across the river,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And I've got some pictures home of the old 1912 fire here in the village. You live here with your family?
Yes.
And you've lived here since 1932?
1932.
And then when you got married, you
Yep.
stayed here? And
Yep.
Okay, what is this behind us, Aurel?
This used to be the old carriage house, and it was made into a living quarters for the McClellans. Woodbury, Malcolm, and his father Hugh lived here until they passed away. And then we purchased the property in about 10 years ago, before Woodbury died.
Just a little bit about the Clark Funeral Home to tell people who don't know. The Clark Funeral Home is owned by people in Lake Placid?
Lake Placid. Reginald Clark owns the property. His father started the business and had a business in Lake Placid, then had one in West Shazy, Champlain, and Rouse's Point. And of course, there's only the three places left now. And Reg and I have taken over after Mr. Clark and my father died. Well, we just stayed right on. It's more or less like a family. It's
right. Okay, let's get into the railroading then. People that go by here know you must be interested in railroads because you got a great big item in the backyard there. Let's get over there and see that right now, okay? Thanks. We're standing next to this red building. What do we have here, Aurel?
This is a Delaware and Hudson caboose that was built in 1923, weighs 16 ton. And I acquired it from the Delaware and Hudson Railroad in 1969 from Oneonta, New York. The interior was completely burnt out. There were no windows, And when it finally came up to Rouse's Point, I didn't know if I wanted it or not. Mr. Diesel moved it for me from Rouse's Point up here. There wasn't any buildings back here at the time, so I was able to drive right on in through. Mr. Alir Racine had given me the rails, and I put down the rails and the ties and had it all ready for them when they came over. And they had a crane, 2 tandem trucks, a lowboy. We almost flipped the crane over when we picked up the caboose to put it onto the rails. But it took them about 3.5 hours to come up from Rouse's Point up here and they placed it on the rails for me.
What did he have it on to bring it here?
Flatbed.
Flatbed. And were the undercarriages were on it?
No, they were in the tandem trucks.
Okay.
And then they came up with the crane, and they put the trucks down first, and then placed the caboose on the trucks. There's a large pin that goes up through from the bottom of the caboose, from the trucks to the caboose. Mm-hmm. And that's what it sits on.
All right. This is the back.
That's the back.
And that's the front.
That's the front.
Why do they have a connector here if it's the back?
Well, they still pulling them back and forth.
Pull out the car.
They can run it either way, in either direction, you know.
Okay. What does this weigh, Aurel? You mentioned
it's 16 ton. The trucks weigh 4 ton apiece, and the caboose weighs 8 ton.
So you got 16 tons sitting there.
16 ton.
Okay. And what else can you tell us? What was the primary purpose of the caboose, except being the last car of the train?
Well, it kept the crew, the conductor, and the brakeman, and the trainman. On a freight train, they would sit up in the cupola and take a look at the train to make sure that everything was all right. And they had all their records. They kept all their records in there and did their paperwork. So it was a home away from home, as Dick Irving told me. He spent many years in a caboose, and he said it was always his home away from home.
And this caboose, as far as you know, went up and down our rails here?
Yes, it came into Rouse's Point, down into Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And I forget who it was, but somebody called me one night and said that he had worked on this road and was a conductor for Delaware and Hudson and had used this caboose. And I forget now who the old gent was that called me.
Now, Aurel, I see a chimney up on top now. Is that a real, something you put in, or is that a real chimney?
No, that's a real chimney.
They have a stove inside?
They have a stove inside. They had a refrigerator. It was a container that held ice. They had a lavatory, which emptied between the rails.
Well, let me ask you this. If they heated this with the stove, how do they heat the regular cars on the train?
From the locomotive.
Okay, so there was like more
passenger train.
Okay, so you didn't heat that with the same way.
No.
Okay, and what do we have right over here?
This is a switch stand.
What does that mean to us?
Well, that changes the tracks from one track to another. This will move the rails back and forth from one track to another, so that the train can go from one area to another.
So, and I think I've seen in the movies where if a train were coming and you wanted to let another train by, because you're coming both at each other, you could go into a siding and come back out, right?
Yeah.
I've seen that. And what is the great big pole we have here?
This one here was from the railroad station here in Champlain. It was the order board, and the order board that's on the top of the pole is from the Rouse's Point Bridge. I was able to get that. I got 2 of them, and it's very, very old.
That's great, Aurel. That's nice.
We had quite a time putting it up, but it's been there since 1970.
It has.
Yeah.
Okay, now can we go inside?
Oh, sure.
Okay, let's just go in for a moment. Okay, we're on the inside, and you mentioned on coming in, Aurel, who would believe there's still snow on your little porch out here? What do you call that? I called it a porch. What do you call that back in?
It's a veranda.
A little veranda?
Yes,
okay.
There's the steps.
Okay, so tell us something about the interior.
Well, the interior was completely burnt out. There was no windows, no ceiling, the walls were burnt out. So when we brought it up here, my brother Ralph and Roger Baker and myself started to restore it. And I had one gentleman call me up from Rouse's Point and gave me a caboose stove. And believe me, that thing really heats up. It'll heat this place up. It'll drive you out of here in no time flat.
I hate to interrupt you, but it says right here on the top of this stove, it's really engraved down inside, embossed. Read it.
It says, "If I am good, please tell others about it."
On the top of the stove. Now that's advertising.
Yeah,
It's State Stove Company.
They used to be able to cook. They did a lot of their cooking through here.
Uh-huh.
They'd have a pan and they'd put it in there, and that's the way they did it.
They burned coal, I take it, right?
Burn coal.
Right.
We still use a soft coal anyway.
Do you start it up much at all? Do you come out here?
Yes,
You do come out here?
quite often, yes. My son and I used to come out and sleep out here. My grandson now is all taken up with it, and he wants to come out. Like I said, I can't put on the lights because I have a short right now in the lines on the way coming out here. Normally, we had the lights on. We restored it with, well, the parlor car chair came from the Canadian Pacific Railroad.
That's that.
That's that green chair.
Uh-huh.
It was on one of their chair cars. And I've got some of the lights from one of their Pullman cars. Also one of the chandeliers from the Canadian Pacific.
Yeah, if you ever wondered what do you call this section up here?
This is the cupola.
The cupola. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can see that they have the little seats up there. I guess you could also lay down up there, couldn't
yes,
you? And
sure.
take a little nap. I guess you can't when you're working, but you see the pipes and the little ladders just next to the door on the way in. You can see how you climbed up on either side of the door. And there is a steam train above the door. I'll give you an
Yes.
idea of what an engine looks like. You'll see more of those later. Aurel, as we look through here, there are other collectors of trains in the area.
Yes.
Now, you and Larry Marnes from Moore's are very apparent
Yes.
with your big cabooses in your yard. Who else are collectors that you know of in the immediate area?
The only other one that I knew of at the time was Lewis Cameron.
And he just passed
He
away
just passed away.
within the past
Yes,
month or two,
yes.
right? And
He and I and Larry took quite a few excursion trips on the Canadian National Railroad together.
how does your collection and Larry's differ? Do you go into anything particular, either one of you?
No,
Or,
I don't
memorabilia?
think so. Frankly, I've never seen Larry.
You haven't seen it.
No.
We thought of stopping in there sometime also. This is the way we meet our neighbors and let people know what's going on. If you come down here again, Aurel,
Sure.
we'll just, here's a picture of you
And my son, Timmy.
there's Timmy's picture here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Calvin with the camera. Bob Venn here with the mic, talking with Aurel Parsons in his caboose. And is there any truth to the rumor that when you are a little tough inside with Marilyn, she said you get out to your caboose?
That's right. That's one of the reasons I got in.
But you're in charge here.
Oh, yes.
You're in charge of
Yes,
this building,
I
right?
am.
Okay.
Until my grandson gets here.
There's also a little picture here that I don't know if Calvin will be able to get. It's kind of small, but it's a picture of Aurel and Timmy, his son. Tim was probably 6 or 7, probably at that.
He was 4 years old.
4, he's tall. He's 4 years old there. So that you've had this here for
Since
20 some odd years?
It'd be 69, be 21 years.
21 years it's been here. Can we,
Sure.
this a little storage or?
This is a little storage room. This is what they use for their bathroom.
Okay, they had a bathroom in this little section here before,
We just put in
right?
and use it for a little storage room.
Okay. Well, they've got. Have you made it much different than what it was? I mean, was there carpet like this in before? They didn't have anything like that, right?
I had nothing in there.
Okay, so you haven't tried to keep it authentic in any way.
I couldn't because
Okay, because it was
so
badly
out
burned.
that,
Okay.
we couldn't use it.
Right.
The pictures on the walls. The reason why I've got these 2 locomotives is my father's brother John was a railroad engineer on the Rutland from Alberg to Augsburg, and these were the 2 engines that he used to go on. He was on this one here from Rouse's Point, or from Alberg to Augsburg, and then he became an engineer in the main line, and from Alberg to, or from Rouse's Point to New York. That was his run. And this is the engine that he used to
Mm-hmm.
go on.
Okay, well, my hand here that's holding this mic is getting a little stiff.
Yeah.
Let's go in. You have heat inside?
Oh, yes.
Let's
we
go
have-
inside
yes,
and talk a little bit further.
Much warmer inside.
All right. Aurel, we're very pleased to be able to talk with you like this and get something down on record. You've been very kind to me and shown me and some of my family around your many collections before. Where are we standing now? What do you
We're
call?
standing, oh, this is what I call my den. This is more or less my room. It's
Right.
a room where I keep some of the railroad equipment that I have, or not railroad equipment, but decanters, and some of the special things that I just don't want to keep down in the basement that might get broken.
We're on the second floor.
On the second floor.
And as we look around, we see some. Well, let me ask you first. What got you started into railroads?
Well, my father, believe it or not, worked in the railroad as a bookkeeper in Hoboken, New Jersey, and Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western. I had an uncle that was a fireman, and a grandfather, my mother's father, who was an engineer in the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western, from Hoboken to Scranton. And then I had an uncle here, my father's brother, who was an engineer in Rutland. And we lived close by the railroad tracks, so I just got interested when I was a kid in trains.
When did you start picking up items?
I'd say about 35 years ago.
Now, we don't want to mention how old you are, but
No.
we do know you came here in 1932, and you were 12.
I was
But
12.
we won't mention how
No,
old
no,
you were. Okay,
no,
that'll
no,
be fine.
no.
All right. As we go around the room here, we see many plaques, and I guess they're awards. We're looking at the first one right here. The appreciation and recognition. Come over here, Mr. Parsons, and his honor plaque is presented to the outstanding citizen, Aurel Parsons, in 1984 by the Woodmen of the World Life Insurance Society, and I'm sure Calvin knows something about that one.
Oh, yes. In fact, Calvin, I think, was the one who was responsible for it.
Well, that was a good choice, Aurel, and you've had many others. Here's one over here. In gratitude for outstanding leadership and untiring availability to serving the Catholic school, the staff of St. Mary's presents this recognition to Aurel Parsons, the first president of the St. Mary's School Board. So now I don't have to say you were. I knew you were president. I was going to mention that. You served on the parish council with me at St. Mary's. You worked at the bazaar for over 20 years every year. You're a great gambler. You got married like the rest of us, right? King and Queen of the 4th Annual Winter Carnival, February 6, 1982, sponsored by Rogers Point Champlain Chamber of Commerce. Another plaque here on the wall. And there's 2 or 3 more over here. Knight of the Year, 1978-79, and Officer of the Year at the Knights of Columbus, the American Legion Post in 89-90. That's a brand new one. Yeah. And Aurel Parsons, Legionnaire of the Year in 88-89. And we see several pictures of some of the sisters of our order at St. Mary's School, very good friends of the Parsons, and I should say that the Parsons are very good friends of St. Mary's. You've done an awful lot for St. Mary's.
Well, I've enjoyed every bit of it.
And you've been very, very close to one sister in particular.
Sister Mary Ann.
Now, Mary Ann, and then the Sister Amy. I think you even have a daughter named after Sister Amy, right?
Sister Amy was always with me.
She liked to play some kind of game with you.
Yes, aggravation.
Aggravation. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get back into the railroads. Tell us what we're looking at here. There's a.
These were the lamps are lanterns that I picked up in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. That is of a conductor. They're made out of pumpkin wood. They're very, very heavy. What pumpkin wood is, I've never heard of it before, but happened to walk in and saw them, and boy, I just had to have them. I got these about 10 years ago. And the other one is of the engineer, and they've never made any more. I don't know why, but I've been back there and I have never seen any more.
Very attractive. Now, this man is holding a great big oil can. What did he do with that oil can?
That was for oiling the drive wheels of the locomotive, and for just oiling in general any of the wheels on the locomotive.
You say engineer.
Yeah.
What did the engineers, what's his purpose on the train?
He was the one that operated the locomotive.
Okay.
His co-worker, the fireman, took care of the boiler, the fire, the steam, but he was the one that turned around and operated the locomotive itself.
The conductor
He was in charge of everything, engineer, everybody.
So he was, the conductor is the number one man on the train?
He's the number one man
He's
on
in
the
charge
train.
of the train. I
He's in
didn't know
charge of
that.
everything. Yeah.
Okay. And how many men do you have on a train, the normal train?
On a normal train, they used to have on a freight train, they would have 2 and 3, I'd say 5 to 6 people on a freight train. On a passenger train, it was a lot more than that. They had the conductors and the brakemen, the people working in the dining cars, the Pullman porters. So they would have anywhere from 15 to 20 men working on the train, on a passenger train.
I'm glad you brought up a dining car, a good friend of ours.
Good, Sparky. Joe Sparks. I have a couple of things downstairs that he gave me from the 300 presidential car in the Delaware and Hudson Railroad.
Yeah. He was a fixture up here, up and down. He knew everybody
he
around at
was.
this point. And poor Sparky passed away a little over a year ago. And no longer with us. He was 76, I believe, when he passed away. But he traveled these trains for many years. What else do we have in here?
All right.
None of these are moving trains that do anything? They can't...
No, these are all decanters. They're bone china. Believe it or not, they're filled with whiskey. They're from the Beam Corporation. The one on the bottom is the General, and that was probably one of the most famous locomotives in the United States. It was stolen during during the Civil War by the North and recaptured by the South again. 4 or 5 years ago, we went to Nashville, Tennessee, and I got the idea that I saw a pamphlet about the General being in some little village in Georgia. And lo and behold, we just took off and we found it. Mm-hmm. We were the only ones, my son and I were the only ones that went in and we took a look at it. There was an old fellow there. They have a Confederate flag. And there's quite a history on the General. It was taken by the Louisville-Nashville Railroad. Georgia figured that they should have it. It was stolen and placed into a barn. The tracks pulled up. They finally located it, and it was President Carter. It was presented to President Carter, who was then the governor of Georgia. And it has stayed there and will always stay there, and it's perfect shape. It used to be a wood burner, then it became a coal burner, and now it's run by oil, and it still runs.
Now, you say there's alcoholic beverages in these, and I assume they're all still full.
Yes.
All right. Now, your painting up above, who made that? Who did the
That
painting?
was a little snapshot that Reg Clark got from Maryland, and a painter in Keene Valley, he's dead now, painted it from a snapshot.
That's great, isn't it? That's a very nice gift. Reg Clark being your partner, so to speak, here with the funeral home. And you've got the thermometer. And
Yes, that was given to me by my son at Christmas time.
Up here, that's very unusual. Weather station. And one more thing here up on this wall, you will see the Delaware and Hudson Railroad Corporation and its freight connections in the red. That's that's where the D&H went, right? Or used to anyway.
Where it used to go. You know, my daughter and her husband gave that to me for a Christmas present a few years ago.
And people don't know, but the D&H never came through Champlain.
No.
This was the Rutland, right?
Just the Rutland.
And then there we see the family.
Yeah.
You want to identify your lovely
my
family?
oldest daughter, Kim.
On the right.
My son, Timmy. My next daughter is Lynn and Amy.
Amy. We talked to Amy on the phone last night. Sister Amy, yes.
Sister Amy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Recently married.
Yes.
Within the past
James.
year or so. And Tim isn't. And
Kim married. Kim married Tom Trombley.
Yes, Tom Trombley. And they have a couple children. I see the
3 of them.
Yes. See them in church and then some more decanters over here, Aurel.
Yes,
those are all decanters.
These are all decanters.
Each one is a separate decanter.
Each one is a separate one. They're made out of bone china. They have made a different scale now, and The smaller scale is the one that Beam is making now. I think they're just about finished with their larger scale.
That's great. Well, we'll go downstairs and see some of your moving items, all right? Some things that are without the decanters, but this is, I've never seen these, Earl. I guess I've noticed them at the wedding. I was up here taking some pictures, and I noticed them, but I didn't really know what they were. I had no idea they were decanters. We'll go downstairs.
Okay.
We're downstairs, just in the center of the house, down into the basement now. Cement floor, obviously, and the biggest thing comes to your attention right here is this great big, I'm going to call it a wagon. What are you going to call it?
Well, it's an express wagon. That's what it was. It came from Rouse's Point at the express office just after it closed. And we had to take it all apart to get it downstairs because it was just too big to come through the doors and weighed quite a bit. Ralph and I brought down most of this stuff. I think probably one of the most interesting things is the railroad wheel.
Here?
Yes. I went to Montreal, the scrap dealers, and they were scrapping locomotives. And so I went over and asked him if I could purchase a drive wheel from a locomotive. And he looked at me and thought there was something wrong with me. Now, by the way, I had a Tempest Pontiac. So he said, fine, if you want a wheel that bad, we'll give you one. So he called the scrap yard, and they had a crane, a magnetic crane, bring one out. When they brought it out, I asked them what it weighed. They said, first of all, where are you going to put it? I said, well, in the trunk. I said, what does that thing weigh? He says, 2,300 pounds. Well, I said, is there any possibility of cutting it down for me? He said, sure. So we cut it down. That thing rode just like a Cadillac on the way coming home with that thing.
That's got to weigh 200-300.
It weighs, the piece right there, the rail and the thing weighs 700 pounds.
It's a little darker over here, but you're talking about 3 feet or so in this area, and maybe 8 to 10 inches here next to my hand high, a couple of the spokes. And this here also, it's got to be...
That's a coupling that weighs about 350 pounds.
Okay, now, these are on the back and front of
each car.
Okay, and what happens here, Earl? Do you want to explain to us what happens on that?
This is they're usually like that when they get ready to hook. When another car comes in, it goes back into place and locks.
And catches the other one in here.
Catches the other one in here. And so it locks. To open it, there's another bar that comes out along the side. And that would open that part there so that it'll open up the other.
Very little chance of them coming apart when they're driving, right?
Yeah,
now, I've heard that Mr. Miner and some of his inventions had something to do with the coupling.
Yes.
Was this the type of thing you were talking about?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And this is where his money came from, this particular kind of an invention right here. That was made by his company in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is this?
This is a headlight from a from a Central Vermont locomotive. In fact, the engineer came over one day and wanted to purchase it, and I didn't want to sell. The fellow had been the engineer in that locomotive. I got that in in St. Albans shops when they were getting ready to scrap a bunch of locomotives.
Mm-hmm.
The marker light, classification light, comes from an old wood-burning rotten locomotive. There's 2 of them. There's an old man in Vermont that's got one, and I've got one.
Like this?
Yes.
Right.
And the agreement is that whoever dies first gets the other one. So...
say that again?
Whoever dies first gets the other one, to make a pair of them.
Whoever dies first doesn't get the other one.
No, well, yes, that's right. The guy that's living is going to get it.
I thought you were going to be buried with it.
No. The guy living is going to get it.
Okay,
Yeah.
You got a deal going. So you got to hang on.
He's going to have to hang on.
Aurel, that bulb that's in there is not the bulb that would normally be in, obviously.
No.
That's a regular bulb you've got in there.
Right now I've got it hooked up for AC current. It was direct current. And it had a big bulb into it. And, so we just hooked it up to...
Okay, now these, where are those mounted?
These are mounted on the top of the locomotive. They're they're very solid. They're very big.
Was that run by hand? You pull
well,
when
some of them were run by hand. The bigger ones were run by hydraulic steam. They were just too big to run by hand. I've got a couple that ran by hand. They were smaller ones. This one here came from the Grand Trunk Western Railroad. This one here was from Canadian National. Down in the bottom, I have the bells that came off from the railroad bridge in Rouse's Point. So the bells would ring to let the engineers know that a boat was coming through. And there was also semaphores that would turn around and turn red.
Is this a pressure?
That's a pressure gauge from the locomotive.
For the steam, right?
For the steam.
Okay. Now, a couple of things that I recognize. Would you get one of those?
Sure.
I don't know what you call it, but would you get one and explain what that is for? I think that's very interesting.
This is an order hook. If men at the station were to give an order for a locomotive engineer or for the brakeman, they would turn around and they would put a slip of paper, hook it in here. It had a clip. They would hook it in, and as the train went through, they would hold it this way.
Go over this way, and I can show you what happens. I would be here as I came down on the train and stick my arm out,
Yeah.
and as I go by at 30 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour, and just pull this right up, and the whole string came off, and the note was tied in here, and I would have the message without stopping.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that's called a what?
An order hook.
Order hook. And you can see there's different kinds here. This one here, I guess you must take it with you.
That one there, they took with them.
They took with me. This one here you grabbed and you took it with you
Yeah.
and you dropped it off at another station.
Yeah.
Very interesting. You'll see those once in a while in a movie. And let's see, there's a crossing, a railroad crossing sign up here.
That came from Cherry Street by Sheridan Iron Works at the time, when they pulled up the tracks in the Rutland Railroad. And it was laying there, and I asked the fellow about it, and he said, fine, if you want to take it. So I took it.
Okay. Getting over here, Aurel, let's cover this.
All right, the locomotive at the top, when I was about 6 years old, my uncle bought that train. It was a Buddy L. And I can remember sitting on the tender, and we'd put rope, set the rope on fire and blow it out so that it would smoke, and smoke would come out, and I used to ride the train. Of course, when he died, he left it to me. So that was back in 1927, 26.
So you put water in that and...
No, didn't put a thing into it. Just sat back.
Oh, you pushed it like...
Yeah. Just
Oh,
sat
okay.
back up in here.
All right.
This one here was made by Mr. Weber, and I think you know Mr. Weber.
Oh, Eddie Weber
Plattsburgh.
from Plattsburgh used to
Yeah.
work for the Plattsburgh Press. Tattooed man and a magician.
Yeah.
That's the man.
He made that in the kitchen from cans. He opened up cans and flattened them out, made the wheels out of lead. And he called me up one day when he saw they had some kind of a write-up in the paper, and he said, I'm getting along in age, and I would like to have my locomotive preserved. Would you be kind enough to keep it for me? And I said, sure. Well, he said, I want to give it to you. He said that you'll keep it as long as you will never sell it. And I said, no, I'll never sell it. And so there it is.
In the glass case. Now, Aurel, at one time you had a train with 4 or 5 cars out in the yard that was on a track that
Yes.
that would drive back and forth. Where is that today?
I've got the live steamer inside. There's the caboose for it.
Okay.
I've got the other cars put away.
Okay, there's various things in here. This is some glasses I take
Those are
with
glasses,
on the
mug.
railroads, mugs from the
Those
railroads.
are, for telegraph.
Telegraph keys you can't see underneath there, and some railroad hats, conductors.
Railroad hats. These are classification lamps. These 2 lamps right here came from the Selkirk Canadian Pacific locomotives, the biggest locomotive the Canadian railroad had. And I heard that it was going to be dismantled. So I went up to Montreal, walked in, and there was only one fellow walking around. And I said, my God, that's a big locomotive. It was, in fact, it was sticking out of the back end of the roundhouse. I said, what's going to happen to it? Well, they said they were going to start scrapping it tomorrow. So I said, well, how about buying the classification lamps? Oh, no, he says, you can't, there's no way that you could buy those, you know. So I said, well, I have nothing to lose, so I had a $20 Canadian bill, and I dropped it on the platform, and I started walking away. And he hollered to me, and he said, where's your car parked? Well, I said, oh, by the door. Well, he says, just open the trunk and sit there for a minute. And lo and behold, when I came home, inside of a bag were the 2 classification lamps from the sulker. And that's how I got that.
This was our chief of police in the village of Champlain, folks, just a few years ago.
The other ones are classification lamps from the Rutland and from the Delaware. And
What do you
Hudson
mean
River.
classification lamp?
Well, they were used such as this up here. Well, let me see, I get the wrong button here. These here. You see the lights up there?
Yes.
Now, that there meant that it was a regular train. If they turned the globes, and the globes turned
Yes.
to white, that meant that it was a special.
Who are they telling?
The people that's on the railroad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The crew would turn around and change the lights from green to white.
Okay.
And that was the special. And they were on the front end of every locomotive. The classification.
Okay.
lamps.
Let me just let you hold this oil can here to give you an idea of what a real oil can looks like. And you see, you don't have to get too close to your work.
No, you don't. You know, that's, this was one from the Delaware and Hudson
That's a
Railroad.
Right.
And they would reach over and squirt oil into the drive wheels and into the trailer trucks of the locomotive.
Use a lot of oil.
Use
They
a
ought
lot
to
of
use
oil.
them on the doors of the cars. They can
Yeah.
open them better. Aurel, I want to mention that most of the railroad items have a stamp on them that says
Yes.
it's railroad,
Yes.
right? So if you think you got a railroad item, you want to know for sure, check the stamp.
Yeah.
Right?
It's, because there's an awful lot of people that's come out and started putting reproductions on, and they don't have stamps. And they try to sell it to you as originals, but they aren't.
You see, there's 3 more. There's 3 over here, and there's 3 more here. A little bit different styles, different lamps. And what is this, Aurel?
This was a light from a railroad station on the New York Hudson River Railroad back in 18 something, and I picked it up from a fella in almost into Dobbs Ferry, New York. And every once in a while you came across an item that you really wanted, you know, and there's a few that you miss.
Let's take a short break here and let Calvin rest his arm, and we'll get back in
Right.
just a second. We're back again, and we're in what we're gonna call the model railroad room. Is that all right with you?
Yes, fine.
Okay, and we're gonna start off at these very interesting locomotives that are here. All functional, I take it.
Yes, every one of them.
And what gauge is that, Aurel?
That's HO gauge.
Okay, and tell us something about those engines.
Well, they're all made out of brass. Some of them that I've had painted by a captain in the Air Force in Plattsburgh. He painted the green one, the daylight, and the sulker locomotive up at the top.
This one?
That's one up there. And I figured, boy, after looking at the job that he did on them, that it was going to be a small fortune. When I asked him what I owed him, he said, well, it'd be $7. And I said to myself, oh my God, $700? And I said, how much? He said, $7. That's supposed to paint. He said, I just appreciate having to do this because I'm on the line for a week at a time with nothing to do.
He must
So-
like those. He really
And
does.
he really had beautiful, he really knew how to do it.
So we see a track right down here in the middle of the room, so that any one of these engines
Can fit on this.
can fit on here and just replace that engine there,
Yeah.
and it can bring it around,
The
right?
only thing is that this this circumference right now will not, a lot of them will not go around this
That's right. Okay.
circumference. It
Okay.
has to have a,
You know, they're too sharp, right?
Yeah, it would have
Too
to
sharp
have
in the
about
bend.
twice the size of
Okay.
this.
And some of those you've had for a long time,
Oh, I've had them for 25, 30 years.
and some of them never have run. You've never, well, I mean, other
No,
than
except
back and
to
forth.
test them out
Just test
and
them
to oil them. I clean them out, oil them once a year.
Is Timmy very interested in this?
He is to a certain extent. He's he's got the fire department. He's interested in other things, his music. And,
what music is he into?
he operates or he works in a band.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So.
And well, it's it's nice to see him following your footsteps. How long were you in the fire department, or you still are?
It'll be 42 years. It was 42 years. The 7th, I think, of April.
42 years. He was 8 years old when he went in the fire department, right? You got about right. Okay, we're looking now at a picture here that you were going to tell me about, but I held up so you could tell me what it is.
Yes, this is a picture of the bridge going across at Niagara Falls. And it was back in 1891, it was. The only other place that Timmy and I have ever seen this picture was in the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. We happened to walk in, and Timmy says, "Look, Dad, do you see that picture up there?" And I said, "My God, yes, that's the same one as we had." An old woman, and I don't remember who she is now, turned around and called me up and said, "I've got a picture. I don't know, I was going to throw it away, but would you be interested into it?" And this is the picture.
It's on a real hard board, I see, right? Aurel, what is the significance of Railway Express Agency? Were they a separate agency from any of the railroads?
Yes, they were. They worked with the railroad, but they were actually a system of their own. They had their own express cars on the railroad. The trains would, they turned around and loaned them out the same as the Pullman at a rental fee. And usually most trains, passenger trains years and years ago, had an express car.
So the express company would have to pay the D&H, say, to be hooked up to bring them someplace.
The D&H paid the express
Paid them. And who got the money if you mailed something? Railway Express?
The Railroad Express.
So the D&H got just a convenience, so to speak.
Convenience.
Okay.
And they had to have it because all the railroads were competing for it, and so that's why.
Now these are some
These are
signals,
boards.
order boards like you talked about.
This one here came off the drawbridge in Rouse's Point, and they weigh quite a bit, and they're real old.
All right. These are the type of things we saw on the top of that big metal pole out next to your caboose. If you remember, you called it an order board. I didn't know what it is, but I remember the expression order board. Okay, as we go down here, Aurel, you can probably show us. Here's some more little engines, right, or smaller.
That I've been using on the.
That you use here, and there's a number off.
This one here. Is
that one goes in the glass on a train.
On a diesel.
Right. The Ellenberg with the H.
That was the
Rutland.
That was the Rutland at the railroad station. The Canadian, as you probably heard not too very long ago, has been taken off the railroad. Marlon and I had the pleasure of going out from Montreal to Vancouver on the Canadian back in 1968. And it was a very luxurious train. Usually 22 cars, and it was usually full. You always had to have reservations before you got onto the train. And they have taken it off now.
Are you finding any of these questions tough for you to answer?
Not too much.
That's what it looks like. I think you just love these trains.
Yeah.
And of course, as a mortician, undertaker, you find yourself with time that you can't really control.
That's right.
You can have 3 funerals at one time, then nothing for a week, right? So you do have time while you're waiting. You have to be here. You can't just run around the country because you got to be here in case someone calls. And so you do have time to do some of these. And you take vacations. I assume that railways are involved in your vacations?
Poor Marlon, I think the first 15 years of our married life, every time we took a vacation, we ended up in the railroad yards. And I can remember one time we were going to go out to dinner, and we'd gotten all dressed up in the afternoon from our motel, and we were going to go out and have dinner. And I had on a pair of white slacks and a light blue shirt. Ended up in the railroad yards, ended up in the roundhouse, and when I came out, I looked like I had worked for the railroad for about 6 months. I was black from one end to the other. But she never said too much about it. She just went along with it, you know.
But she has to be patient. I'm sure
Yes,
to get
she
involved in all of your trips must be something to do with railway.
Now, the 2 big pictures that you see in the wall of the steam locomotive and the diesel is a strange I went to Montreal to the railroad station in Montreal. I wanted to
The
get
diesel way over here, right? That's the
Yeah.
diesel. Yeah.
I wanted to get a plate from the Canadian National Railway. So I said, well, the only way to get one is to go right up to the head office. So I went upstairs into the vice president of the railroad and walked into his office, and these two pictures were on the wall. I asked him if I could purchase a plate, and he said, why? Well, I told him that I was a collector, and I kept looking at those pictures, and he said, you like those pictures, don't you? I said, yes, I do. So he pushed a button on his desk. A couple men came in. He said, take the pictures off the wall, clean them up, wrap them up, put them in this man's trunk. And that's how I got the pictures. He gave me the pictures, and by the way, I got the plate.
Now, when you say the plate, you mean the plate like you'd eat off from in the
Yes.
dining car, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that we don't think we mean a plate to print
No.
them with or anything else.
No.
A plate. Now, there are the 1480 and the 1440. Is that
Yeah.
something like, is that going on a car of some kind?
That
that
goes
number?
on to the locomotive. That's the number of the locomotives.
Now, the one we see on the picture over there says 199 or 189?
155.
My eyes are probably
Yeah,
better than yours.
155.
All right, now that's the name of the tender,
Tender.
or is that the name of the
That's
engine
the
too?
Engine and tender both.
It's both,
Yeah,
huh? So
it's
that
both.
would be like the number of
Yes.
similar to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and we see over here. You mentioned on the way in that picture way over in the
Yes,
is the
that used to be the Delaware and Hudson's main business office in Albany, and it's now owned by the state of New York for the college. It's at the foot of State Street.
just down from the
Albany.
Capitol. You
Yes.
can see the Capitol. You can look
Yeah.
right down at that, right?
Joe Sparks took me through there 3-4 times.
That
when
must
we
have been
were down
interesting.
there. Yeah.
Yes.
You notice a locomotive. a
Just to the
small-
right of it?
Yes, a
Yes.
small picture of a locomotive. And down right by the stove is the throttle from that locomotive.
That's the throttle.
That's the throttle. I had a friend of mine in Chicago. I called him up on a Saturday evening and said, how's business? He said, fine. I got 12 locomotives in today and I'm going to start scrapping them. I said, oh, I'd like to get a hold of something from one of them. Well, he said, I happen to have 3450, which is, I've got railroad pictures of it, professional pictures, and also music, railroad sounds from that locomotive. And he sent me the throttle.
Now I have a question about this, Aurel. Is it in this position or is this perpendicular?
It's in a straight position.
This should go this way,
Yeah.
right? And so you
Well-
pull this across in front of you.
This is the way she would sit.
Oh,
just
up
like
and
that.
down.
Just like that.
Okay.
And this runs up and down this
So
bar.
and he pushes that down to go faster or slower.
Yeah.
And by the way, you don't have to steer a train, right?
No, that's for sure, you know.
Okay. And here's another
Came from New York Central.
bell from the New York Central. And you've seen a lot of little lanterns, and I've deliberately stopped asking questions about them because you're going to see an awful lot more on the other side. But what's the significance of the different colors?
Right. The red is for stop. The white is for looking at the brake wheels of a train or inspecting a train. The amber is for caution, the same as the street light. Your green is for go. And your purple is if a man was working by a car and the car was disabled, they would put a purple lantern so that they would know that that car was disabled and not to be moved.
Okay, we're going to let the engineer get the train going here, and he can probably show you what. Well, first of all, Aurel, we want to tell the people that this is probably the third or fourth or fifth or sixth different layout you've
They're
made.
getting smaller every year. The older I get, the smaller they get.
Did you used to have it around the top of
Yes,
this
I
room?
did.
You had a regular, went all the way around the walls in here years ago when I used to be over.
Yeah.
And then you've had one in the other room, in your
Yes.
main room before,
Yeah.
and you're just laying this out. When you get it finished the way you want it, you'll be putting either an imitation grass or something
Oh,
down
yeah.
here, and
There'll be around houses.
imitation, there'll be little stones
yeah,
around,
yeah.
looks like they,
Yeah.
and then you'll have more buildings probably?
yes.
Okay.
More track will be laid.
We're early here, but we want to make sure we get this, so he'll show you what's happening. You got his control here. You might want to,
Forgot the rest
the
of the
second-
tray with me.
his control panel is right here.
Excuse me just a moment.
Forward, return, etc.
Grandson comes down here every once in a while, and when he comes down, he usually derails and he takes off and takes upstairs.
Well, he's not the conductor or the engineer. He just came down for fun.
He don't want anything to do with it when he problems. And we've hooked up. I let him do the operating of the train, and I switch the signals onto him to see if he's alert enough to stop the train when it's silent.
And then it goes to green?
Yeah.
And how old is he?
He's 4.
He's 4. Well, he's starting
He
early.
does pretty good. Once in a while he goes by and you back up then to make sure that he's not going to go by again.
Okay, now we're going around, and he can come back around just the way we did.
Yeah.
All right? And then if you'll notice, way over there at the junction of those, you'll see a little upright. Now that's a switch stand, right?
That's the switch stand.
And we saw outdoors next to the big pole. And he will go push that manually right now and make the train go in this direction instead of around, you see? There's a little switch stand that kind of throws your tracks over. See? Just like a real train does.
Well, it's a good pastime, you know.
Yes.
Hours go by in a hurry.
You must have an awful lot of free time to work on this, or do you get...
Yeah, in the evenings I come downstairs. I like TV to a certain extent.
Now he's going back again.
But I enjoy coming down here.
I'm sure. Now, what kind of how old is an engine like that by, what's that supposed to represent, Aurel?
That's a New York Central locomotive, and that's the one that made the record of 126 miles an hour back in 1912.
Is that right? The year that this building burned, you remember, the first time.
Yep.
We'll just take a break for a second.
Let him rest his arms.
Just moving here?
She should be coming. This is a live steamer. It was purchased in Massachusetts. I first met the old gent that had it. I asked him what he wanted for it, and he asked me what kind of a car I was driving. I had a new Bonneville Pontiac, and he said, fine, I'll swap you the engine for the car. And I thought that was a little bit too high. So I went back about 4 years later, and the old gent had died, but his sister was there, and walked in and asked if they had any locomotives, and she said yes. Well, there's this one here. And I said, well, to myself, here we go again. And I said, well, what are you asking for? Well, she says, I have that, a caboose, 4 riding cars, and some track, and another set of drive wheels, and I'll take $750 for it. And I turned around and said, what? Oh, she says $600 will be fine. So I got her for $600.
And to clarify this is what you had running out in the backyard.
I had this running out in the backyard, and I think I had just about every kid in Champlain
riding on
the
the
rails
cars
back and
behind.
forth.
Yes, yes.
It operates on 50 pounds of pressure. It will go up to 200 pounds. Roger Baker, when I first got it, thought it was a toy and said, well, I can push that thing. When I opened the throttle, I thought I was going to run over.
Now,
I used to have it tested in the roundhouse in Rouse's Point. Mr. Favreau used to turn around and test it for me. Said it was tested every year.
Now these are for shoveling the coal.
These are for shoveling the coal.
Are these railroad shovels, or are they
yes.
they're
No,
special?
they're all railroad shovels. That one there came from Delaware and Hudson.
Okay, you see, it's got the old wooden handle with the pin through it, and he's got 8 of them there, different heights and so forth. Just above is an example of some of his probably 200.
300.
300.
About 304.
Lanterns, and some duplicates are obviously.
Yes.
You have some duplicates. Like for instance, are any of these for sale? Your duplicates?
No.
No.
Well, no, I trade them.
You trade them. You don't sell. All right. These have been cleaned up, and then some you have
Yes.
put aluminum paint on. And
No, I never paint them.
you've never painted them.
No,
That's the basic
that's
metal.
the basic. This is quite a lantern here. You're now holding $1,000. That's what that lantern is worth. Is $1,000.
This is the one you keep up near your bedroom, though, when you're not.
That's the one I keep upstairs.
Okay. Nice of you to bring it down here for us, and then you keep it
Yeah.
next to you. Now, what is different about this?
This is
lantern?
a Pullman. Of course, there are no more Pullman companies.
Ah, okay.
And it was a conductor's lantern presented to a conductor. This is also a Pullman lantern. It was presented to a conductor. This lantern right here is from the Northern Railroad, which was the Rutland Railroad, the beginning, 1851. That's what their lanterns look like.
Now, I assume that was not to be held with your hand as much as your arm, right?
Well, you put your arm through it.
See, that's
held
the way
it
you
that
walk.
Yeah. In fact, I think that fellow over there used to.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
man here used to live in Champlain, and he's one of the few men in town who are shorter than I am. And what's his name?
I usually call him Jake.
That's Jake, huh? Jake's wearing glasses today, and there's his lantern right here, by the way.
My
It's the green one.
grandson was a year before I could get him to come down into this room because of Jake. He would never come down here because of him.
Well, you can see as Calvin pans around this room, you could be here for hours and hours, and we don't intend to do that, obviously. We're not going to. But, Aurel, I know people have come down here in groups.
Yes.
Boy Scouts, school kids, and you promote that, do you?
Oh yes. Anytime they call up, I'll turn around and
Okay,
come
so
down
if
and try
anybody
to-
out there got a group of, and they have to behave, they're down here. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things to touch, you know. 10, probably the maximum.
Surprisingly enough, they are very good.
They are good.
I've had people from California, Ohio, Canada, one from Mexico that's come down and visited. Never advertised, but they find out about it and they come down.
I'm sure that other collectors know that it's not just having, but it's being able to talk about what you got.
Yes.
And you like to show people, right, Aurel? And so if there's somebody that call Aurel, if you can get together, I'm sure he'd be glad to show you. Here's some more of those engines, like we saw in the other room, some of the numerous he has. And there's ashtrays from different
railroads, decanters.
There's another decanter. Those are all decanters down there?
Yeah.
Decanters there. I see.
Water buckets.
Okay, so that's not to feed your horse. That's a water bucket.
That's a water bucket.
It's leather, or canvas rather.
Yeah.
And what would that be? How would you use that?
They use those usually in the express cars or in the baggage cars for fire. They kept water into them.
And you see, they fold.
They fold it up.
These all fold in half and goes right down to nothing. You've got a couple of them here, I see. And in the CN bag, there's another. That's a very unusual. You showed me that.
This is quite a lantern. This is from the Japanese Railroad. I had a friend of mine who was a captain in the Navy. He was a doctor. And I asked
There's a train just going by.
Yes, there is. He just went through.
Yes, just coming very, very close here. Yes.
I asked him if he would get me a lantern from the Japanese Railroad. And he wrote back to me and said it was an impossibility, that they were issued by the railroad to the men. They had to purchase them. And they would not sell them to an outsider that didn't work in the railroad. About 6 months later, he had to go to this railroad yard, and he was giving the men shots for some, I don't know what it was for, and they presented it. So they sent it. He sent it to me. It was in the box. The handle folded down, and I picked it up, and I said, "My Japanese camera." And I'm trying to figure out how to look through this thing, and I've gotten this about 18 years ago. The original batteries. There is a caution light. That would tell the men, cautious. There is your white light for inspecting your train. When you got ready for a train to leave, there's your green light. And if you wanted it to stop, there's your red light. All in one little...
Instead of having five
of
yeah. items like this,
Yeah.
right? Of course, some of these are 100 years old, probably,
yes,
right?
They are. Yeah.
You know, we're talking, this was all lit with a wick inside,
Yeah.
and they had oil. These
Yeah.
are oil lamps, and that has your battery. Now, what would happen, Aurel? I mean, I'll make a scenario for you. You've got that out in the yard, and you're signaling, and your battery goes dead. You're in trouble.
Well, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. So are the people in the train.
I imagine they carry probably an extra battery with them.
Did you ever hear the story about the guy that said, he was given the test, going to work for the railroad, and he said, now what would you do if you were working at the railroad station? There's only one track, and you look out to the west and you see a train coming from Malone doing about 50 miles an hour, and you look to the east from Rogers Point, there's a train coming at 40 miles an hour, and they're both heading, and they're going to crash right in front of your, you can't notify him. What would you do?
I'd run.
Well, you see, his answer was he'd call his sister. And he called, why would you call your sister? He says she loves to see train wrecks. But anyway, we only had one track through here, right?
Yes.
And then
Yep.
they had to pull off to a siding, let another one go by. How often did they have these sidings?
There was one in Rouse's Point. There was one in Moores. One in Ellingburg. One in Chateauguay. They probably had 15, 20 between here and Augsburg.
Okay, so that of course, trains don't just pop up. You know they're coming, right?
Yeah.
They can't just pop up from nowhere.
Aurel,
Okay.
this book, Bob, back 15 years ago. And I'm sitting down here at the desk one night and I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the pictures. And this came from a company in Pennsylvania. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at the picture, and there's my father.
Now there is Aurel's dad, Willis Parsons, in the
Yeah.
book. Now what a great surprise, and what
Yeah.
a great, what could you ask for more in a collector's book?
1928.
Now that is something.
Yeah,
that is
you
something.
know, that was...
That's amazing. September 30th, 1928, I see you have
Yeah.
written up here. That's amazing. You can't get any more. You should, too bad you couldn't get more.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
But
amazing.
It was really something.
That sure is different. You see, you got the railroad curtains. Aurel, we're running out into time here, or we got to be other places. What else can we see? Hundreds of, dozens of lamps here, like
They're
the
all from
lanterns.
different railroads. I've got some from England, Ireland, Germany. The big land up there is from Germany.
This one?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah. There's England, Ireland, Austria, Germany, New Zealand, Australia. Those were...
This is to fix railroad watches.
Yeah, well, that's...
Now there's a wrench for you if you want. That's about 25 pounds right here.
Yeah.
And there's, I see you've got a couple come-alongs here.
Oh, yes.
Is that what you call this?
Yeah.
Can I move that out of
Move
there?
the cars, yeah.
Whoops. This is very interesting, if I may. Show us what this is, Aurel.
Well, you can put this behind the wheels of a car if you want to move the car, and when you moved it up, it would move the wheel.
And then you pull that down,
Pull
and you
it
see
down,
that comes
and
up,
it
and that
just
turns the wheel a little
just
bit.
turn
See
the
how?
wheels a
Try
little
that up
bit.
again, and you could just, if you could get the camera. See, then that little thing comes up and kind of turns your wheel for you. See, gives you a little bit of leverage.
It's amazing how many people, after they found out that I had a collection, would call me up and say, well, I've got something for you for your collection. John Ross in Rouse's Point called me up, and he was really excited, and gave me a piece that opens up the windows, Pullman windows, on a Pullman car. You put that down under, and it would pry it up, and it would pick up the windows. And this was from John Ross.
John Ross, a fireman for over 50 years in Rouse's Point, was in the Customs Service for 45 years, and directed traffic, good collector himself of many things. Aurel, over here I noticed something that people might be interested in. Some of those locks you have down here.
Yeah, those were on the switch stands, the big switch stand that you saw outside.
Right.
They put those on so that you wouldn't accidentally go over and turn them over.
Right.
Derail the train.
Now, what would you call the person who goes, the yard man who goes out and
Yard
moves
man,
that?
yeah, yard man or switchman.
All right, now here's a very interesting picture. I don't know if Calvin can get this with the reflections. This is where we are right now.
Yeah.
And this is the village of Champlain, with the old bowling alley just before you cross the bridge.
Yeah.
And the old downtown before it burned. The barber shop was here. This is downtown where the hardware store was, in here. And St. Mary's Academy is right there, I guess, right?
He's older than what I thought he was.
This was taken in the early 1900s, about 50 years before I was born. This is when the carriage repository, Champlain Carriage Repository, right here across from the facility. And here's the river going through, which you can't really see above the, and here's the old bridge. Knights of Columbus building is right down in here. And this is up on South Street, and up at a telephone company up in here. The big curve going up the hill. Nice old picture taken here in the village of Champlain.
The locomotives that you see up here, I was telling you, Bob, about this locomotive up here is one of the old Lionel locomotives. And I've been offered $700 for that one, and I won't sell it. This one here is a locomotive, O-gauge, the same as a Lionel, but it was made by a fellow by the name of Gray. He made about 10 different locomotives in brass. When he died, a group of people tried to buy it, and it was just so much money for the company that they couldn't afford it, so it's a thing of the past. I've had this locomotive about 20 years. This is the HO scale. This one here is the N scale. Smaller. There's one smaller than that. There's a T scale.
The train coming down the road awfully close to us again behind us here.
The other...
This is a bigger scale?
That's a bigger scale. That's a German train. And that can be run outside in the snow or in the rain. Makes no difference.
We see about 25 or 30 railroad spikes in here that are used to put the tracks down onto the crossbeam. And if you'll see, what collectors even collect a roll of adding machine tape.
Yeah.
You see the adding machine tape right there? Very, very soft. It's smooth.
Yeah.
The railroad toilet tissue.
There's
And the uniforms.
Yeah.
All right, we'll just take a break for a second. In addition to what you see here, all the hard materials, you've got boxes and boxes full of paper, waybills, and all that type of thing, right? Memorabilia, books.
Books, lenses for globes for lanterns, railroad seats that came out of cars in the Pennsylvania Railroad, which is put away. I have a three-wheel work car that used to be used on the Rutland Railroad. They used it, the old fella that had it used it to go fishing with and pull it off the rails, and I have that in the back room. You mentioned about insulators, and there's a set of insulators back there.
Oh, these insulators here.
Yeah.
You can't see those very much, but You can see this is at least 39 to 40 inches high. That's insulators, and I don't want to take a chance. Those are very breakable.
I've got maybe 200 insulators that I've got put away. There's some of the other bigger ones
That's a
in
big,
there.
down here, ceramic.
There
brown
is some whistles, some locomotives.
Down below here.
The 4106 came off from the train that got wrecked in Saratoga that hit the freight train, the Laurentian. You remember when a woman got killed down there?
No, I don't.
That is the old link and pin coupler that they used to have, and that thing took off more hands.
But that's what they separated the trains with.
Yeah. This
Before.
one here is broken. There's another piece that came on here. It was a chain that held on to one car. They would put it up, and they'd take the other one, and they'd put it in, drop it in like that. And that held them up. And then when they pull it out, disconnect the car.
That's why you can understand how important the coupling that Mr. Miner and his group was, because you didn't have to take all this time to take these apart, and it was a lot safer. Calvin wanted to ask you, when you played Monopoly, what are the first properties you buy?
The railroad.
And what's the rent for the 4 railroads? You know what you
not
got
too
for?
much. Not
$200.
$200. It wasn't too much.
Okay, Aurel, in closing now, we would like to thank you very much for your cooperation, your courtesy, and letting us come down and see your very, very interesting collection that you've been on now for 40 years, right? You've been working with this? And it's very interesting, and we would like to, if anybody's interested, to see that themselves with any group, to ask Aurel. Aurel could try and find the time.
Sure.
Is there anything else you want to cover?
No. It's been a lot of fun. Let's put it that way.
Today or over the years?
Over the years, yeah.
Today was fun?
Still, oh yeah.
It was fun.
It's still a lot of fun coming down here and just going over. It's a good thing that I've got a good memory. I've written down a lot of this stuff, but there's a lot of it that I remember, such as that round dome back there with the painted red.
Yes.
That comes off the water tower of the
Can't see it very well.
in Albert, Vermont.
Yeah. Now, have you noticed that when it comes to collections, your memory is very good?
Yes, it
And
is.
when your wife asks you something,
I don't know.
it seems to fail. You just like Ronald Reagan at that
That's
time,
right.
right?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I got also in here are maps of the railroad yards in Rouse's Point.
Back in these.
Yeah. I've got the controls that were for the frog in Rouse's Point between the Rutland and the Delaware and Hudson.
The frog.
Yeah, that was the crossover that they
Oh,
had
okay.
at Rouse's Point. I had the signals.
Okay, we see about some of the railroad watches you have here. We see book covers for matches, and we see many, many things that we can't possibly cover today. Aurel, what is your, regardless of money, what is your favorite item you have in the whole thing? Except for the picture in the book with your father in 1928. Your
live
engine.
steamer.
Your live steamer,
Yeah.
huh?
That there, the daughter of the man that made that locomotive, or put that locomotive together, came down about 6 years ago and said, "I hear you have a collection." I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, may I take a look at it?" I said, "Sure." She was from Connecticut, came down. That was the only thing that she looked at. She walked in and she says, "There it is. Oh, it's in nice shape." And I said, "Well, why are you interested in that?" She says, "My father made that locomotive." And she said, "I wanted to see if it was still together, if it was all busted up." And I said, "It'll always be together as far as I'm concerned. And my son will be the same way. And it runs perfect. We take it out twice a year, we take it out in the bag, we fire it up, and jack it up just a little bit so that the big drive wheels are off, and we run it for a half an hour or so."
Well, it's certainly been a pleasure seeing your items again, Aurel, and we'd like to mention to the people who are watching on Hometown Cable that this is an endeavor by Calvin to bring you different things that you find interesting. If you have something that you'd like to see covered, like Aurel's collection and any item, we're planning to go to the Champlain Laundry, we're planning to go to the telephone company, and we've got a few other people we'd like to interview for this type of program. If you like this, tell Calvin, tell some of the advertisers. Tell the advertisers, they're the ones who bring you these. Calvin can't do this all out of his own pocket. The advertisers make this possible. So We hope you're enjoying it. This is Bob Venn, Calvin on the camera, and Aurel Parsons, the mayor, the father, all the hats that he wears. He didn't put his hat on today. I'm very surprised. He has a hat he usually wears, his engineer's hat on, or his conductor's hat. Conductor, the boss's hat. But we want to thank him, and we want to thank everybody out there for watching this. We call it the Meeting Your Neighbor program today. Thanks much.